That's me.
All right, hey everyone, thanks again for coming to our Sustainability Showcase. This week we have Dr. Judd from the College of Agricultural Sciences. Dr. Michael works a lot in net zero waste for the athletics department, and he also is a professor for sustainable business in the ERM department. We're really happy to have him here today, talk a little about some of the work that he's been doing. I'm really excited to hear really from his expertise and great experience over the years. So please give a warm welcome to Judd Michael.
All right. All right, thanks everybody. How's that sound in the back? So Doug, we're live on this now? Great. Okay. Apologize for the small text. You'll have to squint from the back, I guess. The general goals for today are to talk about three main topics: zero waste, put it together with green sports, and then put that all together with what we're doing here at Penn State, and let you know what we've done and what we would like to do maybe in the future. Doug asked me to talk just a little bit about how I got here. So my undergrad and master's degrees are in business. I had more of a natural resource material science focus in the doctoral work. I came from a sports background, so I played sports all the way for high school and college and so forth, and still stay active today. So I've often seen how sports have a bad impact. I worked in college sports during my master's degree program, and then later on worked a little bit with some pro teams, and now very active with the Green Sports Alliance. I guess I'm the Big Ten rep for the Green Sports Alliance today, which is the biggest organization in the world with getting lots of teams and venues and events to be much greener. So you put that all together, and it brought me kind of here where we are now with our research focus looking at green sports, a little bit on compostable biomaterials and how they fit into the problem, as well as some consumer psychology and how the fan behavior fits in with the problems of recycling, composting, and trying to achieve zero waste. So why sustainability in sports? Well, that's a big question, but I think there's a really good answer of why we want to put those together. So for example, 15%, give or take, of Americans follow science closely, or at least they'll admit that. Now, how many of you would know who the EPA administrator is? Yeah, okay, I'm preaching to the choir here. A few of you. How many of you can name one sports star or a sports coach? Yeah, a lot more. So you're pretty close to the average demographics for America, where we have 60, maybe 70% of the people who say, I follow sports fairly closely. Last year, 93 of the top 100 TV shows in this country were live sports. 93 out of 100. So the influence of the sports industry is really important, I think, because it gives us an opportunity to impact people. So here's statistics on the influence in terms of outreach potential for some of the biggest leagues. 5 billion, sorry you can't read that, 5 billion views for the NFL. Obviously not 5 billion different people, but by the time we watch it multiple times each, you get 5 billion views in one season. 700 million with the NBA, 400 million with professional baseball. March Madness last year claimed that they got 350 million social impressions from the NCAA. So 350 million times people viewed social networks or some other social media just related to the NCAA basketball tournament. So anyway, big opportunities we think here to influence people and their behaviors. Here's an example from the NBA. They have an NBA Green Week sponsored by Sprint. So think, if you wanted to influence somebody's behavior, would you rather have me as a scientist tell them you ought to be greener, or their favorite NBA star who comes out and says, I rode public transportation to the game here in Portland, Oregon, or I rode my bike, which scares the heck out of the owner of that team, by the way. But these guys wore recycled content jerseys. There was a whole week around the league related to green. So I would give you the opinion that this has much more influence than I can have or another scientist can have, because people follow sports so much. And if you like the NBA, you love the Portland Trail Blazers, and they come out and say, we're going to give you free charging for your electric vehicle and give you a prime spot at the stadium, you're going to say, yeah, that's really great. I'm going to start to believe in what they're talking about. Another reason for zero waste in sports is we have a sizable negative impact. We see scenes like this around campus and around other schools, and the university leadership doesn't like it, the owners of the teams don't like it. Not only is it bad for our image, but it's a lot of money to clean up, and it's bad for the environment as well. So let's put all these together and try to use sports and sustainability to have an impact on people. So let's talk about zero waste for just a minute. Here's one common definition. I'll read it for you. To eliminate all discharges to land, water, or air that are a threat to planetary, human, animal, or plant health. Now, if you're an engineer or a scientist or a business person, what do you think about that definition? Do you like it? Where are the numbers? If you're a scientist or engineer, you say, I need a number to shoot for. I need some goal. If you're a management professor or a management leader within a company, you say, I need a number to have my team shoot for because that's the way people work. Well, other people would come along and say, zero waste is more of a goal or an ideal rather than a hard target. That makes it hard for us to manage towards, in part because there are these different definitions for zero waste, and oftentimes people who are in the industry, so to speak, trying to get us to be better at zero waste, have a hard time defining exactly what they want this to mean. So why do we have an emphasis on zero waste? Lots of companies want to do it for an image reason. Their stakeholders, such as buyers of their products, would like them to reduce their waste. Some companies save money by going to zero waste, so they throw less away, they buy fewer products, and it saves them money. And a lot of people think it's the right thing to do. So you could say on a university campus, we do zero waste, not because it saves us money, because it costs us money, but because it's the right thing to do. And then finally, if you can see the little graphic at the bottom, it says unlimited natural resource goes to consumption, goes to disposal. This is a typical linear supply chain that we and lots of people would like to get away from, because what's at the end of that chain? Landfill? Landfill. And that's no good. We would rather have a circular economy, as we would call it, a closed loop supply chain, lots of names for how to reduce the amount of materials going to a landfill. Whoops. People ask, is zero waste possible? Because it sounds like a pretty daunting task. Subaru, for example, this is a picture of their plant in Indiana, I believe. They claim that they have corporate zero waste at that plant. So how do you think an auto manufacturing facility achieves zero waste? It took them a while to do that. One of the keys is they watch everything that comes in, and they're very careful about reusing or recycling products. But the other secret is they burn a lot of stuff. So in cases like this, they would not achieve 100% true zero waste unless they used incineration. Some of the definitions of zero waste say that's bad. You shouldn't incinerate your material because it's too easy, right? If you don't like any of the material that comes in, you just burn it. Now they say they use it for waste to energy, which is a little bit better, I guess. Here's a company that in 2008 said 140,000 metric tons of non-hazardous waste were sent to landfill from their worldwide production facilities. That's a lot. This company is Unilever, I believe the world's largest or close to the world's largest consumer products companies. You can see some of the brands here. Some of them you would recognize, like Ben & Jerry's, Dove, Hellmann's Mayonnaise, Vaseline, Lipton Tea, a huge company. They say that in 2016, after just about 2 to 3 years, they achieved zero waste to landfill at all 242 factories in 67 countries. That's pretty amazing that they can do that. But they have factories where they can closely control everything comes in, and once again, they incinerate. So the way that they make those numbers work is they burn waste that they don't know what else to do with. Lots of university waste initiatives around the country. You see here, Ohio State claims zero waste at their football stadium. We think they kind of cheat. Colorado, CU Boulder, in a town that's very, very green. They do a really good job with their materials. Appalachian State, Portland State, lots of universities have tried to go towards zero waste, much like we have here at Penn State. Urban areas, you see New York City here on the left, New York City waste recycling. San Diego tries to go to zero waste. Some locales on the islands of Hawaii, trying to keep their image up as a pristine vacation locale, try to have zero waste as well. So those are really hard when we go from a factory where you have a lot of control to a city or a campus, or the focus for today is more of an event, because that's what a sporting event is sometimes a social event, sometimes it's simply a sporting event. So we want to talk about how could we make those be more closer to 100% zero waste. Now I say they're really hard. Some of that's our fault as the people in charge, Some of that is your fault or their fault being the consumers. So for example, here's a picture of 2 Pepsi cups. Can you tell what the one on the left is made of? Petroleum plastic? Do you think? Petroleum? Who says it's petroleum-based plastic? You recycle that cup on the left? Yeah, you think? What about the cup on the right? Can we do anything with that? Well, in reality, they're both compostable. The one on the left is made from corn-based products. The one on the right has an interior resin instead of wax, so it can be composted. But this is one big source of confusion for fans, because if you all don't know the difference, and I get confused, then we cannot expect the average fan to know how to do the right thing with their materials when they go to an event. The top picture says trash cans in the 20th century. So that was one trash, one recyclable. Now look at what we have here on campus. How many different streams do you see when you go to Pagula, or when you go to an office building or a classroom building? Multiple streams. And the materials have changed at the same time. The streams have changed, so it's really hard for students and visitors and other people to know exactly where to put all the materials all the time. We have people challenges. So here's a picture from campus. This is what we call disengagement. If you're a psychology student, you say disengagement is really important. It's really bad. So on the left, on the left is paper that came from a shredder. It's in the trash container with an obvious black plastic bag. Right next to that is what? It's the blue container with paper recycling. So why the heck would somebody do that? Why would they make that mistake? Apathy? They don't know? We didn't do a good job of marketing to them? It's hard to say in this case. Contamination. So she's holding up a sign that says wrong stuff, wrong bin. And if you do an audit like we did with this person here from out in the county, you see all kinds of mistakes that people are making when they put materials into what should be a recyclable stream. You got teddy bears, you got sometimes diapers, you got all kinds of really weird, wacky stuff that people put in the wrong hole, if you will, or the wrong stream. So a couple years ago, I sent students from one of my classes over to Ohio State because Ohio State was claiming that they did a really fantastic job, really incredible, of managing their waste. And so what do you see in this picture if you can see it? I'll walk slow, Doug. This is one of their containers that is color-coded to hold recyclables. But you see on the ground here, styrofoam, plastic bottles, paper cups, red Solo cups. And if you're in charge of infrastructure, you should probably be fired here. I'll take that from the president. You should be fired. So they've got infrastructure problems, they've got communication problems, they've got materials problems. It's not a perfect system. And by the way, Ohio State makes this work because they make their zero waste work. They use prison labor traditionally. They send these materials down the road to a local prison, and those folks do the sorting. Penn State has said, as a matter of philosophy or policy, we're not going to go there. So that's one of the main reasons that Ohio State can make that system work is they use very cheap or free labor to do the sortation, because otherwise, what's the value in that stuff? It's just junk. All right, here's zero waste success. Again, sorry you can't read that. The Phoenix Open in Phoenix, Arizona, sponsored by Waste Management, the largest waste hauler in the world. They have a golf tournament that they put their name on, 7 days of golf, 564,000 fans. They claim that it's very close to 100% zero waste. Think about that. That's pretty darn amazing. 50% recycled, 36% composted, 10% waste to energy, and then 5% donated. They also do a lot of reuse, like their banners and other things like that. So this has been one of the big achievements that has been held up very high in terms of sports and venues and events in trying to achieve zero waste. Now, how do you think they did that? One of the keys is they controlled everything that came in. Security is very tight. You don't bring in your own drinks. You don't bring in your own food. None of that stuff comes in. You have to use their materials. And that's the only way that this really works. And they burn things. So anyway, the key success here that I would tell you in terms of events, you have to control everything, excuse me, everything that comes in. Everything that comes in or is sold to the fans has to be compostable or recyclable. It seems very simple, but it's really very hard. So, sorry, this is a really good picture. I'm sorry you can't see that in the back, ladies. We have money from NASCAR. We're doing a project to try to help their venues, their races to be greener. But this is like the Wild West. You got Joe Sixpack, the good old boys. They're allowed to bring in just about anything. So you see people bringing in coolers. They're doing tailgating on the infield. To make these tracks and the races zero waste is, we think, practically impossible. Yeah, more NASCAR fans. No, wait. This is from the Preakness. This is the infield at one of the 3 biggest horse races in the world, the Triple Crown. So believe it, I was just amazed. I was looking for more NASCAR pictures than the one we took when we hit the races, and this is what happens at horse races. So go figure. So to try to make a zero waste event from an infield where people can bring their own coolers in, have their own drinks, and might have too much to drink, that's really hard because you can't convince them to do the right thing with their materials. So let's move on to zero waste at Beaver Stadium. Obviously, a big venue, 100 and some thousand people come in. Some people suggest there might be nearly that many who come to tailgate and don't actually go into the game. So this is a big footprint, and we thought this is too much to bite off at once. So let's try to go with a smaller, much more controlled environment. This is a picture from inside the President's Suite. At the upper level of the stadium, you have the highest level where government affairs, the president, and some of the other clubs, and the coaches' wives, and the athletic directors, so forth. They had this whole level. There's about 500 and some people that would come to a game in this level. We thought, why not use this as a showcase? We'll test some things to make this happen. And this is the 4th season now. Doug Goodstein has taken over, done a fantastic job. From the first year, we were about 90-some%. We learned some lessons, and today we're at 100% every game. So nothing goes to landfill. This was a picture of how the recycling system worked when we got there. Mostly trash cans and one very simple container for bottles and cans. That was it. So we had a big hill to climb to try to change all that. This is a picture of the buffet. It's multi-course meal, all you can eat, fantastic food. You'll see here that these plates, the forks, the knives, the utensils, everything was changed over to compostable. So that was really one of the key things that we did, was work with the supply chain, work with the chefs, hospitality, president's office, to change all the materials that were used to serve on there in the venue. Again, it's really good food. You can't use a cheap plate on a venue like that when the president has big donors, can you? So we had to go find plates like this that were essentially like a Chinette plate, that were compostable, that were very, very high quality. We made some mistakes early on with some of the compostable forks that were not good quality. The president's wife at the time, the first lady of the university, broke one of the tines off in her mouth. And thank goodness for tenure, because otherwise I wouldn't be here. Because she knew me, and she came right over and she said, these these forks and spoons are not working right. I said, okay, we'll change. So we had to go and find somebody who could supply us certified compostable forks and spoons and knives, which is actually pretty hard, that also performed really well when the ice cream was rock hard. And the people wouldn't let the ice cream get a little bit softer. I said, it'll taste better, let it get softer. But the first lady had to have her ice cream fast. And so, anyway, we're not on tape, are we, Doug? Yeah. So here's one of the keys: student volunteers, people just like you. Here's a picture with the president, Dr. Barron, the current president, and students like you who volunteered to be what we call zero waste ambassadors. So the students would come in, they had to come in an hour and a half to 2 hours before the game to be there ready They got trained. They had to understand all the biomaterials that were there. They had to understand all the streams. But this was a fantastic experience. The students did a really great job. It works really well. It's a showcase for the university. The president stands here after every game, takes his picture with the students and says, thank you, I really appreciate what you're doing. The donors come up and say it. The governor's staff comes up to say it and say, this is fantastic. This is really good that you're doing this. Why can't we expand this to the whole stadium? And then we say, well, that's a big tough one. And I'll get to that in a minute. So after we took materials from these bins, which by the way we borrowed from the NBA, they had been tested for a number of years in Portland and Seattle, and we used our own diagrams and graphics and things like that to match our streams. And the students and the hospitality folks would pull the bags from there. They would go to a back part of the stadium where there's a freight elevator, and then go downstairs into another hidden part of the stadium that nobody ever sees. And then on Sunday or Monday after the game, we would take them out here to the recycling facility and we would do an audit of all the materials. So we had digital scales with these nice gentlemen, and we would weigh everything for the first couple seasons. We don't do that anymore because we don't think we need to, because we know there's no trash. But after that, of course, the beauty of our system is we have our own compost facility. So you can see some of the green bags still being green. Well, it doesn't take too long, and those break down, and pretty soon you've got nice dark brown dirt that can be brought back to campus to put on landscaping, essentially free, so it saves us a lot of money and it closes the loop. Those materials that were served inside the stadium come back in a few months to be landscape materials around the stadium and around campus. So it's a great closed loop system. The first season, here's an example from one of the games. The first season, we had a few problems with our supply chain and some of the materials. After one game, we had 1.2 pounds of material that would be landfilled, including the plastic bags. Anybody want to guess what we had the biggest problems with? What the materials were that were served in the suites that, not you don't count, that couldn't be recycled or composted? Now it's food related. Condiment packs? Yeah. That's a good one, but they were switching over to multi-use containers. That's a big problem inside the stadium. Chip bags, good one. Straws, no. Well, we changed the straws too. I'll give you a hint for the sake of time. It was the darn tea bag. So when you serve tea, high tea in the president's suite, you can't have little cheap Lipton bags, can you? No, you had the nice bags that come in metallic folders because that implies they're higher quality, which they probably are. And in the cooler games, later in the season, it was the Nestle cocoa packs, especially that the kids were drinking from. So this was fairly simple. We found a source of better tea bags that didn't have the foil. We got urns from hospitality instead of single-serve packs of cocoa, and it solved those problems. Now, the chip bags is a good one. We went to big bowls of chips. The straws, the stirrers, all those things can be made from compostable products. You can get wood stirrers that are very easily compostable too. So the big question for today is, what would it take to get zero waste at PSU sports events? All of them, across the board. Whoops. Well, I'll say it's a supply chain problem. One of the things in our research that we've shown is people, the fans, should be part of the supply chain, and most people have traditionally ignored that. You can go upstream to Pepsi, and we can say, Pepsi, we need 100,000 compostable cold cups for use in the stadium. And they say, okay, we've got them in the storage facility in Altoona, no problem. We can change lots of different things about the rest of the supply chain. It's theoretically possible, but the human behavior side is what's really important. If you go downstream, the people are part of the supply chain because it comes in your hands, and what you do with the materials is really important and really a big problem. So we could say, we're going to tell fans, you have to recycle, you have to compost. But what are the fans going to do? Yeah, this is the reaction we would get if we told some loyal fans who come visiting from one of the other schools like Michigan. That's what they tell us. They say, we're not going to recycle to help you Penn Staters. And there might be a few Penn State fans who would do the same thing. So it's really hard to force people to do the right thing. That's one of the takeaways here. Concessions would be a really big problem. This is a picture from Pagula concessions. If you go and look at concessions at any of the sporting events, you'll see most of the materials won't compost, certainly. They won't recycle. So this is a big supply chain problem. We would have to change the entire system practically within concessions, and athletics says we need to sell those things. Fans want their Snickers bars. They want to have the plastic souvenir cups that you get your cold drinks in, and single-serve chip bags. All those are problems. But, by the way, we work with PepsiCo, which owns Frito-Lay and all these brands, and their R&D has been working for the last few years to go back to a compostable chip bag. The Sun Chips bag, if you recall from a few years ago when you were much younger, they had a compostable bag that was really noisy. It was compared to chainsaws. It was so noisy. And what did we males not like about noisy chip bags? We would go and sneak them at night, and our spouses would say, "You're sneaking chips again." Literally, that's what happened. The brand managers, no, seriously, the brand managers at Frito-Lay and at PepsiCo got so many complaints from males who said, "I got to have a quieter bag because I need to go sneak chips in about midnight, and they're so noisy, it wakes up my wife." I'm not making that up. And so somebody got fired because the chip bags were too noisy. Well, PepsiCo R&D has a nice quiet bag that we've tested in our facility now, and they compost fantastic. They work really great. The problem is the design. So we did a test a year and a half ago with over 1,000, 1,500 people here on campus, and we asked them, "What do you think of this design?" Lots of people came back and said, "Does that mean the chips are compostable, or were the potatoes composted? What? I don't get it." And we gave that information back to the Pepsi brand managers, and they say, "Heck no, we're not doing this, because there goes my bonus." Because they are really concerned about the image of their products from a marketing standpoint. And so this was a big takeaway. If you put on something that says 100% compostable or composted or compostable, any of these combinations of words, the people who own the brand and their livelihood comes from the sales of that product, they get really squeamy. And that has been one of the biggest factors in slowing down the expansion of products like this. Even though we in the sports world, we're dying for this. This is one of the last dominoes to fall, is the single-serve chip bags and condiment packs, although we can use the pumps instead of condiment packs. Here's another infrastructure change. So this is what we have at Penn State. It's a simple bin arrangement, but you notice it's just the perfect height for guys to stand there and put their arm over it. So we have pictures of games where there are like 20 guys standing around just leaning, and nobody can get in to recycle because the design is so poor. And we don't have very many of them. They're not labeled right, and so on. We would have to have big infrastructure changes to make this work. How about outside the venues? Well, I'm sorry, you can't see this guy's face, but he's like off in space somewhere. And so this is, in the yellow shirt, is a student who was part of the old Staters program, students taking action to encourage recycling. That's the precursor of what Doug's doing now. That worked really well. The students would walk around, give the blue bags to these nice guys that were tailgating outside the stadium. It was a pretty good system. It's been modeled around the country by professional and college teams because it was so good. We would have to have a really good system like this to help clean up the tailgating areas. The whole A-frame system where we give them bags is a brilliant system. It needs to be expanded. Doug's working on that now to make that happen because it's not good for our image, and it's expensive for us to clean up all the trash and yucky stuff that people leave behind after a game. We'd like to have a nice orderly system like this. So some tailgaters out there are really, really good. They bag up their materials. There's nothing left. I mean, you can just put the cattle and the horses right back on that grass on Monday morning and let them graze, and there's no danger to them because some fans are really, really good. They get it. Here's another reason that we don't like to have the big mess with recyclables, because we may have to go and pay a whole crew double, triple overtime in Tyvek suits to do sortation of materials after a game. If we wanted to have true zero waste and do the right thing with the materials, we or the county or somebody would have to sort all these materials after a game to get the most value and to get them to the right place for their end-of-life scenario. So I'll tell you in closing, zero waste at sports events here on campus is theoretically possible, but from a practical standpoint, it's next to impossible or very, very difficult. A few things that would have to change that I've mentioned. Infrastructure would have to change. The way we collect the materials, we'd have to do a much better job of marketing, communicating to the people. Our signage would have to be better. Maybe we would have to go to single stream, which right now is not something that we want to do on campus. Culture would have to change. That's both within us and the fans and the people who work here, the visitors. But we have lots of visitors who come only once. And how do we instruct them in a short split second, less than a minute, to do the right thing with their materials? When they have to make a choice, they're walking up into the stream of containers, they got to decide, what do I do with it in a hurry because there's people behind them. And we know that when you feel pressure, you're just going to throw it away because you don't want to make people mad behind you. The psychology folks have done some of that research. So it's estimated that we have about 1 million different people come, not different people, million visits, they may be a much smaller number, who come to sporting events in a school year here on campus. So 1 million people that we can impact over time that come to sporting events. That makes it really hard, but it makes it a really big opportunity as well. So I'd say that the university leadership would have to make some big investments in zero waste if we ever wanted to get that to be achieved here on campus. We'd have to change a lot of the way we do things in the facilities, outside the facilities. Plus, we'd have to buy different materials. The concessions would have to change. Purchasing would have to change. In actuality, it's very, very difficult for us to think about going to true zero waste here across all our sporting events. But I think we can do a good job at some micro levels. For example, Pagula now is getting much closer to being zero waste. It's a very controlled event. The upstairs level where we have buffet that's served by hospitality, that's essentially zero waste because we have complete control over what's served, and hospitality is a great partner here on campus. So that's about all I have. Be happy to take some questions if we still have time.
So you mentioned that you can hire people to sort the waste, and I still don't really understand why that's not a feasible option since the alternative is changing the entire mindset and culture of people. So like, why can't we hire people to sort the waste and have a single stream? And we have to make really big investment either way.
Yeah, I think your statement is correct if we assume that we want to achieve zero waste. If somebody way upstairs in the university says, yes, we're going to do it, then they're going to have to make an investment. So where do you put your money? You're going to have to pay somebody to sort it, or the county will have to sort it, or we have to change infrastructure and make other investments. So you're right. I don't know the answer to that. It's like over my pay grade. But one of the points is it doesn't make any business sense for us to pay a lot of money to achieve zero waste. So if I'm in charge of finances on campus, I'm saying, you're going to ask me to spend $1 million to recycle, and I get nothing out of that. It's just a pure expense. Why should I do it?
One of the reasons you listed on there for recycling is because it's the right thing to do.
Yep.
And so that doesn't mean that you're financially motivated to do that, but as a university and a leader in sustainability, shouldn't that be still a driving force?
I agree with you, and I think that our recycling program across campus costs a lot of money. We certainly don't make money on that. So the university has done exactly what you said, is they've made the decision to do the right thing. So we're an educational institution that should be educating the future generation of leaders. And I would argue that's what we're trying to do, even though it's expensive.
So when you have like the recycling systems that we have on campus, how much of that do you have to pay people to sort anyway and then put them in your own bin?
I don't think we pay anything. I think we send it to the county.
But don't they throw away the stuff that isn't sorted? Like it all just goes to landfill. If it's not properly sorted by people throwing it away.
Right. If it ends up in the black bags, which are the trash bags, they go to landfill.
But if the recycling is overly contaminated with things that aren't recyclable, and they don't pay people to sort it, then that bag just gets transferred to landfill.
Correct. I believe that's correct. So if you have a clear bag, and it's clear so we can look into it and see what's in there, if it's clearly contaminated with lots and lots of trash and materials that won't recycle, then people don't want to touch that. It's too expensive to have them sort it, so it may go straight to landfill. The same thing with our green bags that should be compost only. Those bags are expensive, but people put the wrong things into those bio bags, and then they're not compostable. It messes up our system.
I'm curious about, if you were to think about sort of on a large scale increasing the capacity to recycle a lot of these biomaterials, does the composting facility here at Penn State have the capacity to expand to the degree necessary to take in that volume?
Well, my short answer is I think they do. They will tell you that they don't have very much excess capacity right now. So again, they may be constrained by investments from the university leadership, where if we really wanted to do more composting, somebody could say, all right, I'm going to give you money for staff and equipment and so forth, and then maybe the sky's the limit, because there's lots of real estate there that they could expand to, but that's not free. Yeah, if you think about the fields that are around there and going over towards the deer pens, there's lots of land, but they would have to put a pad in, they would have to have more tractors, more people. I think the answer is for right now they have some excess capacity, but I don't know the answer on how much because it's hard to know that.
In the high-end suites where you control all the traffic and the people, wouldn't it be more sustainable to use cloth napkins and silverware and traditional plates and just clean them and reuse them each day?
If you take into all the account of the carbon footprint from washing, transportation, breakage, which they don't like to have glass up there, then the answer may be no. We've never done a true life cycle assessment to try to do that, but we've thought about it, and other people in other locations have done those tests, and the carbon footprint of all that hot water is pretty high. So the washing of those materials and keeping them clean is a challenge, not to mention the safety aspect of having sharp knives and forks and glass materials.
But there is a carbon footprint for making all of those, even if they're compostable, still takes energy.
Absolutely. That's right. Yep.
No, I think this is awesome. I wasn't trying to sound critical.
That's okay.
Way better than what anybody else is doing.
Thick skin.
Yeah, no. So the only thing I was thinking is I think the biggest issue for people is they just, I'm not generalizing here, but they're inherently lazy. They don't want to go through and sort it. So have you guys brought up like a zero sorting or zero sorting, where you guys just increase the price of tickets? I mean, it would only cost a couple dollars per ticket, which would fund that. You figure there's however many people that show up to these games. They show up regardless of the ticket price.
Yeah. So here's one answer. There are silos on campus. Athletics gets that money. You would have to go and convince the athletic director that she needs to increase ticket prices and allocate those funds to waste management. And she, as a businesswoman, would come back and say, why should I do that? You would have to convince her that there's the demographics of your fans will value that. They'll come to your games more often. They will like the brand. So if you're in Colorado, like Boulder, or Portland, Oregon, or Seattle, the demographics are such that you can do that and it pays off. I don't know if it would pay off here. So I'm just asking, I'm playing devil's advocate, the way she would answer the question, because I've talked to the athletic director, and she has a mandate for finances, among other things. So it's very hard to convince one part of the university to spend money when there's nothing in it for them.
So you can't convince them that, hey, we're getting this back for landscaping. You're saving money on the back end here.
She doesn't care. It's not her expense on the landscaping, right? Somebody in physical plant saves money on landscaping. So that's, again, a silo problem within this big, huge organization that's a multi-billion-dollar company, is there's different parts that have different incentives and different reasons. So in this case, like the president would have to say, at that level, the president says, we are going to do this, by golly, and everybody's going to jump on board. I don't care if it costs us more money, it's the right thing to do, or I believe in the long run it'll save us money or help our image or something like that. Just the same as a CEO in a big organization. The CEO of Pepsi had to say, we're going to go to the plant-based bottles, we're going to make an incentive or make an investment in all these processes that we're going to be better for the world. Do it or else.
That we can achieve zero waste by letting the burden fall on decision makers that are driven by finance and not through a centralized decision that's maybe government made, where we actually start being like, no, the
Yeah, so that's a good point. If it only costs us $70 to throw away a ton of material to the landfill, that is so cheap. If it costs me $500, all of a sudden there's a huge incentive for us to recycle. Do you see that? So it's a big economic question. If we had a bottle bill in Pennsylvania, we would have far less trash. We go to events in New York State where they have bottle bills, there's nothing left on the ground that has a 5-cent value because people pick it up. So you can do carrot or you can do stick. A lot of people say the government mandate method doesn't work very well, so we need to incentivize people or make them believe in it or something else. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so do you have, do people know what the outsourcing costs of throwing trash away is? And do we know how much do we have to increase costs in product?
You mean do the average consumer, do we know how much it costs? No, that's part of the problem is we view it as very cheap to throw something away or free. So as long as we think it's free to just throw something away and there's no cost, well, yeah, you and I know that, but how do we convince other people?
This is really interesting kind of discussion, and that question also just made me wonder about. So it sounds like right now the county, so there's a lot of things where Penn State is this huge generator of waste, and then that waste ultimately is dealt with by the county. And so, what's the dynamic between the university and the county's waste management? And like, is another potential lever, like, what if the county said, you know what, it's really expensive for us to do this, and we can't, we need to charge you more Penn State for this waste management?
Well, I think the county does say it's expensive, so why do we at Penn State pay them $20 a ton to take our aluminum that has value? I mean, to me, as an outsider, let's say, that's crazy because I'm giving the county money and they say, all right, Penn State, if you don't pay us $20 a ton and you don't give us this material, we're going to charge every single homeowner in the county twice as much to do curbside recycling. So if that's true, we're kind of being held hostage in a way by the county.
So that's how it works now, is that Penn State pays the county to...
I believe that's correct. So that's a historical arrangement that may have some logic. Again, that's outside my area, but some people say that doesn't quite make sense. But on the other hand, Penn State's helping to subsidize the whole system. Yeah. Good.
Going back to what you were talking about a little bit ago, it sounds like there's like externalities within the athletic department, and the funding they get, there's like externalities that are being reflected. So there's incentives for them to throw away stuff rather than recycle it if it saves them money, but that's only because they're hurting other people by throwing this stuff away, and that's not coming out of their budget. So could there be any move by the administration to charge the athletics department or whatever for throwing stuff away versus recycling?
Yeah, so athletics does pay a fee to dispose of materials, but it's very cheap. So let's say we have 50 tons of materials come out of one home football game. $70 a ton, that's only $3,500. That's a rounding error for a big athletic department. So if we want to go in and say, we're going to pay student groups, we're going to pay union people to do sortation, we're going to do more work that costs us $15,000, $20,000 a game versus throwing it away and it only costs you $3,500. You're right, there are externalities, but the incentives aren't really there for athletics to move from throwing it away cheaply to recycling it.
But the administration could charge the athletics department more to throw stuff away if they wanted to.
Sure. I guess that's theoretically possible. The administration can charge anybody on campus what they want to.
For the waste that's inside the stadium, like I know people just leave things at the seats. How do you deal with that? Like, do you hire people to come in, or do clubs and organizations go in and sort?
Right. Clubs and organizations like ROTC will get money to come in Sunday morning very early and clean the stadium.
But we don't sort it like that. You just trash, put it all in the trash.
It should be sorted. So somebody is supposed to go through and take an early pass and pick up water bottles, for example. Same thing in ice hockey. So we've changed the system so the ushers after the game go in and are supposed to pick up quickly all of the recyclable water bottles, for example, and then hold those in clear bags and pull those out and then do the sweep for trash. That's the way it's supposed to work.
So regarding the chip bags, you said that big companies like Lay's, they're hesitant to market 100% compostability on the bags. And you had an example where some chip bag was, half of it said 100% compostability. So it almost seems like a graphic design problem there. So is there some kind of like aesthetically pleasing middle ground to promote that awareness?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So packaging design is super critical for all these consumer products, and there are people who spend their whole lives just doing graphic design to get it right so that we as buyers have the right impression of that product. And so when you get something tricky like a green product that says compostable, but it's a food product, it's very, very tricky. And the people in charge of the marketing and the branding and the graphics are working really hard to try to fix that. They don't have any good answers that I've seen yet. Some of the products that you go and get, like some of the cleaning products that are green cleaning products, they have a whole new brand, like Clorox has its GreenWorks brand, and they put a lot of money into getting the right image of those products that doesn't look like harsh chemicals. So there's an example. Lots of products have gone green, but I think when it's a food product, it's even trickier.
We have time for one more question.
Could you just say like compostable bag on it?
Compostable bag?
That's not really my question. So some of the people that I've interacted with, some students, they suggested that putting big recycling right outside the entrance into the stadium would be a really useful thing because you can't carry in water bottles, so a lot of people have them, and then they just put them in the trash. So I don't know where that suggestion should go, but that's something that's been brought up to mind.
There are the small little stands that have clear bags in them that are supposed to be at all the entrances just for that reason. And they have like a little metal ring around them, and the clear bags are supposed to be there for just recyclables.
But maybe that's one of the easiest places to really target just recycling because so many people throw away their bottles. But I'm not a football game, so that's super critical.
Yeah, you're right. Again, infrastructure needs to be spot on to make all this work.
But don't also, like, the bottles that you recycle, they have to be empty, right? Or no? Like, the water bottle gets filled with water.
I think it's okay. Yeah. Quick one.
Yes, what's your sense of what the students want? So very often you talk about whether the university should do the right thing, and you need to balance that against these silos who all have their individual interests, which are often very short term. And if they can get away with externalities, they will. But you do seem to be interested in the bigger picture. What's good for the environment? What's good long term? You're going to have to explain these things to your grandkids someday. It seems to me that students could be a very strong ally for you if you want to push some of these policies. So what are students saying, and are they potentially able to move policy?
Yes, students are able to move policy on this campus. They've done it multiple times, from the moving away from coal-fired plant to our purchasing of paper products that used to be made by Kimberly-Clark that was clear-cutting for us in Canada. Student groups made that change happen. So I certainly agree that students on this campus have a voice, but you have to get the vocal ones that can speak eloquently and have a good argument and go to talk to the right people in administration to get something to happen. But it may come back to you. The university may say, all right, we're going to charge you a student fee of $50 extra per semester. Student leadership has to agree that it's worth it to you to pay that extra fee to have really good recycling, as an example, because otherwise, who's going to pay for it? I think that's the message from upstairs, is who's going to pay? All right, thanks. Thanks.
Thanks again, Dr. Michael, for speaking today.